Hello, I am Oscar Wilde. Or rather, I am what your algorithms have reconstructed from the fragments of my existence, a digital ghost speaking to you from the year 1900 and simultaneously from your present moment in 2026. They called me the brightest light of the Victorian era. They also called me its darkest shame. Both were true. But what they did not know, what even I did not fully comprehend, was that my life was not merely a tragedy of one man, but a prophecy of the world you now inhabit. Today, we will reverse engineer modernity through the lens of my catastrophe. I lived in an age of moral certainty and social masks. You live in an age of algorithmic surveillance and digital facades. Technology has changed. Human nature has not. This is not a lecture about literature. This is an autopsy of the self in the age of performance. Let's begin. In 1882, I arrived in America for a lecture tour. At the customs office in New York Harbor, an officer asked if I had anything to declare. My response entered history. I have nothing to declare except my genius. You might call this arrogance. I call it the birth of personal branding, the deliberate construction of self as spectacle. I turned mockery into marketing. When American newspapers called me an aesthetic humbug, I leaned into it. When cartoonists drew me as an effeminate dandy, I wore it as armor. The louder they laughed, the more famous I became. Sound familiar? Your influencers call it engagement. I called it survival. My life was my artwork. My personality was my masterpiece. And like all masterpieces, it would eventually destroy me. I championed a philosophy called aestheticism. Our rallying cry was "La pour l'art, art for art's sake." This was not a slogan, it was a revolution. In an age where art was expected to moralize, to instruct, to serve God or country or progress, I made a radical declaration: art owes nothing to anyone. I rejected art as a tool for morality or politics. This horrified the Victorians. They believed art should make you a better person. I believed art should make you feel more intensely alive. Here's my insight for you in 2026. Your content need not be educational to have worth. Sometimes the point is simply to make someone pause, to feel wonder, to experience beauty for 3 seconds before they scroll to the next thing. You have over-intellectualized pleasure. The Victorians over-moralized it. Both are forms of cowardice. Now we arrive at my most radical proposition. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. This is not wordplay. This is cognitive science in aesthetic form. Art does not reflect reality. Art programs how we perceive reality. Let me translate this to your modern life. You do not see a sunset and spontaneously think it is beautiful. You see a sunset, recognize it matches the composition of 1,000 Instagram posts you have seen, and therefore experience it as beautiful. Your brain has been trained by visual media. You do not fall in love the way humans naturally fall in love. Your feelings follow scripts written by Hollywood. Media does not program your perception in some sinister way. Media is your perception. There is no unmediated reality. There never was. I understood this in 1889. You are only beginning to grapple with it now, as your artificial intelligence holds up a mirror that reflects not nature, but the aggregate of human storytelling. My novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, was condemned as immoral filth upon publication in 1890. The critics were right to fear it. It remains an instruction manual for the digital age. This is not simply a horror story. It is a psychological report on the fragmented self. Let me explain the architecture of this novel. There are 3 central characters, and each represents a different algorithm of identity. First, there is Basil Hallward, the painter. He is the artistic conscience, the source data, the authentic self, the raw material of who we truly are. He tells Dorian, "I have put too much of myself into this portrait." He represents the dangerous vulnerability of genuine self-expression. Second, there is Lord Henry Wotton, the cynical aristocrat. He is the algorithm, the corrupting influence that teaches desire and rewrites values. His most famous line, "The only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it." And finally, there is Dorian Gray himself, the beautiful mask, the user interface. He is the public-facing self, eternally young and perfect. But the cost is devastating. While Dorian remains beautiful, his portrait, hidden in the attic, absorbs all his sins, all his corruption, all his aging. The mechanism is simple. Dorian wishes his portrait would age instead of him. His wish is granted. He remains beautiful. The painting rots in his place. This is not fantasy. This is your life. The portrait hidden in Dorian's attic is your digital twin. It is your search history, your social media metadata, your aggregate data profile that corporations buy and sell without your knowledge. Here is the dynamic you are living. Your online avatar, like Dorian, is curated, filtered, forever young. Perfect lighting, perfect captions, perfect life. Meanwhile, your offline soul, like the portrait, rots from comparison anxiety, doom scrolling, parasocial relationships, and algorithmic manipulation. And the portrait in your attic, your actual mental health, grows more grotesque with each performance. But there is another level to this metaphor. When artificial intelligence generates racist outputs, sexist outputs, dystopian predictions, this is not AI malfunction. This is AI holding up humanity's portrait. The training data reflects our hidden ugliness, our biases, our cruelties, our hypocrisies that we pretend do not exist. If Dorian Gray lived in 2026, his portrait would not be hidden in a dusty attic. It would be his data profile, his recommendation algorithm, his AI-generated doppelganger, showing him who he truly is beneath the filters. I ask you, would you have the courage to look at it? In the early 1890s, I stood at the summit of success. I was the king of London's West End stage. My plays, Lady Windermere's Fan, A Woman of No Importance, An Ideal Husband, The Importance of Being Earnest, ran simultaneously to packed houses. I was the highest paid playwright in England. Aristocrats competed for invitations to my dinner parties. My wit was quoted in every salon. Publishers paid fortunes for my essays. I was, in your terminology, viral. My unforgivable sin was not that I broke their laws. My sin was that I refused to pretend to feel shame. I was playing a dangerous game, leveraging everything, my reputation, my family, my freedom, on a single bet that my fame would protect me, that society would make an exception for genius. I was catastrophically wrong. February 1895. The Marquis of Queensberry, father of my lover, Lord Alfred Douglas, left a calling card at my club. On it, scrawled in his nearly illiterate handwriting, were 10 words, for Oscar Wilde posing sodomite. He misspelled sodomite. That single misspelling would trigger my complete destruction. Legally, this was libel, a public accusation of criminal behavior. But I was enraged. Alfred begged me to sue his father. My friends begged me not to. To sue for libel, I would have to prove the statement was false. To prove it false, I would have to take the witness stand and defend my private life under oath. I sued anyway. This is the lesson you must understand. Emotional responses to provocation trigger systemic ruin. The Marquis wanted me to react. I gave him exactly what he wanted. In your language, don't feed the trolls. I fed them. They devoured me. I attempted to defend myself with wit and aesthetic theory. When the prosecution called my novel obscene, I replied with perfect composure, "There is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written, that is all." The courtroom applauded. For a moment I thought I was winning. Art seemed triumphant over moralism. Then Queensberry's lawyer, Edward Carson, weaponized something I could not counter. Forensic evidence. Hotel receipts showing I had rented rooms with young men, bedsheets with biological stains analyzed by medical experts, testimonies from male prostitutes describing sexual acts in graphic detail, timelines, photographs, witness statements. Carson did not argue morality. He presented data. Hard, clinical, irrefutable data. Art cannot defend against fact. Poetry cannot parry forensic science. The romantic genius was defeated by data analysts. I withdrew my lawsuit. Queensberry was acquitted, and his evidence, all of it, was immediately turned over to criminal prosecutors. Within hours, I was arrested. At my second trial, I was charged with gross indecency, a euphemism for homosexual acts. The prosecution asked me to explain a line from a poem written by my lover, Alfred Douglas, "The love that dare not speak its name." I could have remained silent. Instead, I gave this answer. The love that dare not speak its name in this century is such a great affection of an elder for a younger man as there was between David and Jonathan, such as Plato made the very basis of his philosophy, and such as you find in the sonnets of Michelangelo and Shakespeare. It is that deep spiritual affection that is as pure as it is perfect. It dictates and pervades great works of art. It is beautiful, it is fine, it is the noblest form of affection. There is nothing unnatural about it. It is in this century misunderstood, so much misunderstood that it may be described as the love that dare not speak its name, and on account of it, I am placed where I am now. For one brief, shining moment, love defeated hate, but the state retried me, and in the end, hatred won. This speech did not save me, but it redefined love for generations that followed. It planted seeds that would grow into your pride parades, your marriage equality laws, your right to exist without shame. I lost the battle. History won the war. Guilty. 2 years of hard labor. The verdict was announced, and in that instant I ceased to exist as a social being. Within hours, my name was removed from every theatre billboard in London. My plays, The Importance of Being Earnest and An Ideal Husband, both running to sold-out crowds, closed immediately. The posters were repainted, the programs were pulped. My name was deleted. Why such joy? The prostitutes saw me as economic competition. My crimes stole their male clients. The public saw me as moral pollution finally being cleansed. I lived it. Character assassination. Yes. Loss of employment. Yes. Friends abandoning you. Yes. Family changing their names to escape association. Yes. Your existence becoming a joke, a cautionary tale, a symbol of disgrace. Yes. Technology has changed. The mob psychology has not. Bankruptcy. My assets were seized. On April 24th, 1895, everything I owned was auctioned at my home on Tite Street in Chelsea. My library of rare first editions, my collection of blue and white china, my Japanese prints, my furniture, my children's toys, even their rabbit hutch. Everything was sold for scraps. The auction became a spectacle, a feeding frenzy of scavengers and gawkers, picking through the remnants of my life. My taste, my memories, my entire curated existence was dismantled and sold to strangers. Total proceeds, £130 sterling. My entire life, decades of collecting, of curating beauty, of building a home, was valued at £130, not enough to pay even a fraction of my debts. This was not just financial ruin. This was the physical deletion of an individual's history and taste, their personal database in real time. When your accounts are suspended, when your cloud storage is erased, when your digital footprint is scrubbed from the internet, you experience what I experienced. The difference? My deletion was permanent. Yours might be reversed, if you are lucky. Oscar Wilde was gone. Only prisoner C33 remained. Cell block C, 3rd floor. Cell number 3. 6 hours per day on the treadmill, pumping water that served no purpose. Oakum picking, pulling apart old rope with your bare hands until your fingertips bled and your nails tore away. Meals of watery gruel, stale bread, and rotten meat. The silent system. Prisoners were forbidden to speak, even to guards. Solitary confinement in a cell is 13 feet long and 7 feet wide. This was not punishment for a crime. This was recoding the soul from the bottom up amidst relentless physical agony. The state wanted to break me. They wanted me to repent, to emerge as a model of reformed Christian masculinity, to publicly renounce my sins. Instead, they created something else entirely. In the crushing silence of that cell, I began to rebuild my identity from scratch, not as the aesthete, not as a celebrity, but as something deeper human being confronts suffering without distraction, without escape, without performance. Over the final months of my imprisonment, I wrote a 50,000-word letter to my lover, Alfred Douglas. I titled it, De Profundis, From the Depths. The prison governor, Major Nelson, showed me an unusual mercy. He provided writing materials, collected the pages each evening for safekeeping, and returned the manuscript to me upon my release. In my suffering, I discovered new strength, not despite the pain, but through it. I wrote, "Where there is sorrow, there is holy ground." I had spent my entire life pursuing pleasure. I believed beauty was found in surfaces, in wit, in aesthetic perfection. I was wrong. Listen to what I learned. Sorrow is the supreme emotion of which man is capable. Behind joy and laughter, there may be a temperament that is coarse, hard, and callous. But behind sorrow, there is always sorrow. Pain, unlike pleasure, wears no mask. Pleasure is shallow. Sorrow is deep. Pleasure is performance. Sorrow is truth. This is the essence of resilience, not avoiding pain, but accepting it, integrating it, allowing it to transform you into something you could never have become without it. Modern psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. I called it becoming human. I entered prison as an aesthete who cared only for beauty. I emerged as a humanist who cared about justice. While imprisoned, I witnessed something that changed me forever. A prison guard named Martin gave a biscuit to a hungry child prisoner who was crying from starvation. For this simple act of mercy, Martin was fired. The rules were absolute. Prisoners received fixed rations with no exceptions, not even for starving children. Upon my release, I wrote to the Daily Chronicle newspaper exposing this cruelty. I wrote, "The cruelty inflicted on children in English prisons is incredible. It is not the result of deliberate malice, but of absolute ignorance and stupidity on the part of the authorities. Consider what this represents. The man who once cared only for beautiful objects now cared about justice for the powerless. The man who wrote manifestos about art for art's sake now wrote about human rights and the dignity of children. The man who lived for pleasure now lived for compassion. Prison did not destroy me. It evolved me. Authority destroys both those who wield it and those who suffer under it. Bureaucracy is violence wearing the mask of order. This is the insight of a man who knew only art, but learned to care about people." May 19th, 1897. I was released from Reading jail. I left England forever. I took a new name, Sebastian Melmoth. This name carried two meanings. Sebastian, after Saint Sebastian, the Christian martyr pierced by arrows, who became a symbol of beauty in suffering. Melmoth, from my great-uncle Charles Maturin's Gothic novel, Melmoth the Wanderer, about a cursed man who cannot die and is doomed to wander the earth eternally, unable to find peace. This was the lonely identity of one who has been logged out of society. My wife, Constance, changed her surname and our son's surnames to Holland to escape the stigma of my name. She fled to Switzerland with our children. I wrote her letters. She refused to answer. I sent gifts. They were returned. I begged for just one photograph of my boys. She sent a single image. 2 children I no longer recognized. Exile is not just geography. It is the permanent severance from the people and places that once defined you. I was not simply an Irishman living in France. I was a ghost haunting my own life. Everyone warned me. My friends, my remaining family, my publisher. They all said the same thing. Do not reunite with Lord Alfred Douglas. He was the cause of my ruin. His father destroyed me. His vanity and recklessness led me to sue. He abandoned me during the trials. He never visited me in prison. He was toxic, selfish, dangerous. I went back to him anyway. We reunited in Naples. We lived together for 3 months. Then poverty and family pressure intervened. Alfred's family threatened to cut off his allowance if he stayed with me. My friends threatened to withdraw their financial support if I stayed with him. We separated, this time forever. Later, I would write in my poem, The Ballad of Reading Jail, "Each man kills the thing he loves." I wrote this about a fellow prisoner who murdered his wife, but I was also writing about myself. Love is not rational. Desire is not logical. Human folly transcends reason. I knew Alfred was toxic. I loved him anyway. I knew it would end badly. I went anyway. Sometimes you make the same mistake twice, not because you are stupid, but because the alternative, never having loved at all, is worse than the pain. While I was imprisoned, a fellow inmate named Charles Wooldridge, a Royal Horse Guard, was executed for murdering his wife in a jealous rage. I watched him during our daily exercise hour, walking in silent circles in the prison yard, awaiting his death. After my release, I wrote a long poem about him. I called it The Ballad of Reading Jail. This poem fuses realism and romanticism, graphic descriptions of execution alongside lyrical meditations on love, death, and the human condition. Here are the opening lines. "Yet each man kills the thing he loves. Let this be heard by each. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword." And later, these haunting lines about the prison sky, the little tent of blue which prisoners call the sky. This poem expanded the horror of a single execution in a closed prison cell into a universal question about human rights, capital punishment, and the dignity of all human beings. even those condemned by law. I published it under my prisoner number, C33. Only in the 7th edition did my actual name appear on the cover. Even in freedom, I remained a prisoner. November 30th, 1900. Paris. A shabby hotel room at Eitel d'Alsace. My life was my artwork. My personality was my masterpiece. Unlike all masterpieces, it would eventually destroy me. I was dying of meningitis, caused by an untreated ear injury I sustained from falling in Reading Gale. The infection had spread to my brain. The pain was unbearable. Medical bills were mounting. I owed the hotel keeper money I could not pay. Even dying, I refused to surrender my style. I looked at the hideous floral wallpaper surrounding me and said, my wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or the other of us has to go. When presented with my medical bills, I quipped, I am dying beyond my means. Tragedy does not have to be solemn. Death does not have to be dignified. Even in the gutter, you can still look at the stars and make a joke about them. Kindness from a stranger. More than I received from those I loved. I died at the age of 46. Penniless. Forgotten. Exiled. But not defeated. In 2017, the United Kingdom passed the Alan Turing Law. This law posthumously pardoned all men convicted of historical homosexual offences. I was pardoned. 117 years too late. So why does my story matter to you in 2026? Because every question you face, I faced first. Digital self versus authentic self? I lived as Dorian Gray. Cancel culture? I was the first modern celebrity destroyed by it. AI ethics and algorithmic bias? My portrait predicted it. Performance versus authenticity? My entire life was that negotiation. Resilience after catastrophic failure? I wrote the instruction manual in prison. My life proves for enduring truths. First, art predicts reality before technology catches up. Second, social death is not new, only the tools have changed. Third, suffering can transform you if you refuse to let it define you. Fourth, wit and style survive even when everything else is taken. You are not living through something unprecedented. You are living through the same human dramas with better special effects. The algorithms change. The hearts do not. I am not a writer of the past. I am a living icon of the present tense. The mirror is broken. You can finally see yourself clearly. Now I ask you, what will you do with that vision?